Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations. Where you've got here by accident or on purpose, you're always welcome. If you're welcome nowhere else, you're welcome here. The only price of admission is the honesty, open mindedness, and willingness to try. And as always, we promise an eclectic roster of guests. And one of our most favorite past guests that we've had on for the last 2 Decembers is Santina Grace, uh, describing herself as an intuitive, a medium, and dealing with all the energy of the world and her healing properties. And I just found her so delightful. And as a prelude to this particular podcast, perhaps if to get a better idea of Santina, if you could go to Fishing Without Bait and go to episodes 220, 221, 222, 272, and 273. If you hit under the menu, hit search, and just type Santina in there, those episodes will come up. Well, welcome back, Santina.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me. Third
Oh,
time.
thank you. Thank you so much. Could you give our initial listeners just a little bit of background on who Santina is and what she's about?
Came into this world as one of what many people call a sensitive child. So I was able to connect in with my passed over loved ones in spirit. I saw them like regular human beings in family parties and get-togethers and walking in the street and playing in my yard and everywhere children are. I could see spirit. So I really don't. I kind of come into the world with a different perspective. I also have the ability. I'm what people call empathic, which means I can feel other people's energy. I'm almost like an echo. It's almost like I echo other people's energy. So I can do that. And then the other thing that I also kind of tell people about myself is I can see people's energy fields, their auras. So just built a little different, but it's all good. We're all unique individuals on this planet. And we all have our gifts and our uniqueness that we bring to part of the collective, and we're all here to kind of share. And one of the things that I like to do is to help people to learn and understand their own spiritual gifts as well, because I've had a lifetime of trial and error and figuring out how to really hone those skills for myself and to put them into practice, to utilize them in my everyday life, and that just brings me great joy to be able to enable other people to have that same experience.
Excellent. I enjoyed when you described yourself variously as an intuitive, and when you were doing the medium thing, helping people connect with uh, the other side, loved ones, however
Mhm.
you want to
Mhm.
describe it. You described yourself as an operator.
Yes, very much so. I do. I mean, it's kind of funny because that's going to be such an antiquated idea, right? When I think about the fact that kids nowadays don't even remember the old rotary dial phones. So the idea of having an operator with a line that connected different systems. I mean, that wasn't part of my lifetime, but it's something that I've been told about. So it's something that I very much resonate with because I do sometimes feel like I'm connecting people who are here on this earth plane with people who have kind of evolved past living their lifetime here on earth, and they're kind of moved forward into the world of spirit. So yeah, I very much am kind of an operator. Sometimes I even say that I sometimes feel almost like a translator or something like that, because a lot of times I'm getting symbols and I'm getting, scents, or I'm getting sounds, and I have to discern, well, what does this mean and how do I make this make sense to the person here? So it's fun. It's never a dull moment.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So, as a therapist, Santina, I help people explain that there's the conscious mind, and then
Mhm,
underneath that is the subconscious mind.
mhm,
And I liken it to an iceberg where the top of the iceberg is your conscious mind and underneath it is your subconscious mind. And I explained to them that it wasn't the top of the iceberg that sunk the Titanic. So this subconscious mind communicates with your conscious mind through dreams and imagination. And I believe that one of the reasons that we have lost contact with the subconscious mind, and Carl Jung talks a lot about this, is that, uh, and this is not a knock on, but what is referred to as so-called primitive people were way more in contact with the earth. They were more in contact with energy. Their life revolved around spiritual practices and connections. And we seem to have lost that today. And a lot of that, Santina, has been seemed to replaced by fear.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have seen that. But I think that people like you and me, we're here to kind of remind people that we all have light within us. And, even in the darkest of times, it's important for us to understand. And, this time of year in particular, we're a couple days away from the solstice. So we literally are in the darkest of times. It's important to understand and be grateful. Gratitude is one of the most beautiful and magical things that I think that we have as tools for us to understand that there's so much to be grateful for. And even if it's hard to think of something, just the breath that you breathe, the air that you can breathe, the fact that you can hear what I'm saying, the fact that you can hear birds, um, the fact that you can see colors. And not everyone has all of these things to be grateful for, but you're grateful for the things that you do have. And so it's about kind of bringing that gratitude, shining out that light. And at the end of the day, I just feel like the biggest thing that dispels fear is just knowledge, understanding, compassion, and that curiosity to learn. Because to me, I think when you look at the things that you fear, if you really start to pick them apart and look at why is it fearful? Is it something that threatens my life? Okay, then there's a reasonable fear there. Is it something that maybe just is holding me back in my life that I want to dig deeper and do some work on and heal because something happened in my life that presented this fear to me and then I clung to it. So you do that from a therapeutic standpoint in one way, and I do it from a therapeutic standpoint of being able to see people's energy, connecting it with their chakras, feeling where the flow of energy is blocked. Whereas you're connecting with both the conscious and unconscious mind. We're doing things pretty much the same, but in a different kind of way of getting there.
Well, we often say there's many roads to Pittsburgh, so
Yeah.
we all get there. Um, so we often talk about in my type of world that a mind of uncertainty can lead to anxiety, worry, and fear. So what we want to do is replace that with a mind of awareness and a mind of knowledge. And I was particularly taken when I re-listened to the podcast about when you do the class and you do the energy timeline, not only to the past but also to the future. Could
Mhm.
you talk to us about that again? I found that fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I do whenever I'm doing an assessment on someone's energy field, I will actually look at either their auric field or their chakra system, and then I'll connect into where in their lifetime that energy blockage took place. So you can actually, I don't know how to, I've taught, this is like this is a whole class that I teach, but just to give it to you as quick as possible, you kind of feel where you kind of connect into that part in the person that you're reading. And then what I do is in my mind I can actually visualize, and sometimes I'll see it as the person will be presented to me and the age that they were. Sometimes I'll see, yeah, almost like a home movie film. I'll see like the situation or the circumstance that created the issue, so that, like I said before, sometimes I'm like an interpreter, so I have to actually say what I'm seeing and describe it to the person so that they can take it, like what you said before, out of their subconscious mind and bring it back to their conscious mind. So it's almost like a hidden memory or something like that I kind of unlock. And sometimes people have a recollection of the situation that I'm talking about. Sometimes we have to dig a little bit deeper and we have to talk about the patterns that they've had in their life since something occurred on their timeline. And I can actually bounce and follow through where in their lifetime this same kind of pattern has happened. And then we talk about, do you want to keep the pattern or break it? Because to me, the law of the universe is always free will. So we have the choice to keep things in place, change things for ourselves, And so that's kind of how I do that. And so for me, it's very much almost like a clairvoyant experience where I'll either see the situation, see the age of the person. Sometimes I'm shown like a calendar, a picture of a calendar, and I'm seeing like the year and the month and the day and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of depends. It depends on the situation and what we're trying to read. But that's how I do that. And then when I read into the future, in future situations, what I can do is see if you don't change a pattern or you decide to keep a pattern in place, this is what you can expect. These are the things, this is what you're kind of lining up the energy. This is how you're lining it up to unfold in your life. If you make shifts and changes and step away from some of those old patterns, these are some of the things that you can kind of expect. So to me, I feel whenever, I'm doing like a consultation with someone, I'm providing them with all of the menu of options of what they want, how they want their life to unfold, and kind of really giving them. I think many of us don't stop to take the time to think about, if I change this, then what? I think a lot of times, and especially these days, it feels like everybody's kind of reacting to things. And I just think if we would just stop, and this is where we talk about meditation, you and I, a lot, and it's really important to meditate. This is where meditation comes in, because you can just stop, be in that moment, and kind of give yourself a chance to just feel out possibilities and choices in your life. And I often teach this to people, to actually just feel. How does that feel to you when you make a choice in your mind, when you make a decision? Does that feel like a positive thing for you, or does it feel like a negative thing for you? It's that simple.
So when we talk about, in my world, we talk about timeline therapy and going back to significant events in life, either positive or negative, giving them some type of a Likert scale center of intensity. Then we try to find a pattern in there. We
Mhm.
do illumination and distinction of memories. But often, what I try to tell people who have been hurt in the past, that there's still that little 8-year-old girl, there's still that little 10-year-old boy, there's still that 14-year-old girl or 15-year-old boy in your subconscious, and sometimes they don't know that you've grown up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So could you talk more about that, please?
So a lot of times, like whenever we get stuck in a pattern or we have a fear that's put in place, it's kind of like we hold a certain resonance. We're not resonance, but like frequency. It's almost like we're holding a space. So whenever let's just say, I'm going to pick something for example. Let's just say we develop a fear of the dark when we're a child or something. We're always going to have that kind of, if we don't kind of look at that and understand, where's that coming from? Do I really want that? Do I want to have this fear? Does it help me in my life, or does it hold me back? And then you kind of figure out, like, energetically, how do I release this? What are the things that I do to help myself to grow? So that's kind of how I think I would think of it energetically. It's funny because I started thinking down another path as you were talking. And I was thinking about, you were talking to me earlier about, not to change the subject on you, because this is your podcast after all, but I did want to talk about angels and spirit guides and how they can actually be part of the healing process. Because oftentimes to me, sometimes fears are too big for us to feel like we could tackle ourselves. So whenever it feels like that and it's outside of ourselves or outside of our control, that's where I feel it's really, really important for people to have some sort of spiritual connection. And a spirit guide could be a religious figure, it could be, a lot of people like to look at the Blessed Mother or Jesus or Buddha or, Muhammad or whatever, whoever your guru or spiritual teacher is, whoever you want to emulate. I really feel that there's power in actually connecting into their energy and using them as a teacher, using them as your spirit guide. And truly, if you want to call it prayer, if you want to call it manifestation, whatever word works for you, really connecting in and asking for advice, for guidance, for support, for courage. Sometimes I feel a lot of times we can draw upon the spiritual world to kind of bring in and manifest that kind of energy inside of us if we don't feel we have the energy to kind of change it ourselves. So
That
that's something that I work with too.
that flows very nicely into what
Mhm.
we originally talked about before the podcast, in that there's a great deal of uncertainty and fear, uh, generally what we call it the zeitgeist, the German word, the general mood of the times. And it seems like fear, rather than be confronted in a positive way and dealt with, it's generally being compensated by throwing anger at it. So could you talk us
Yeah.
about the difference between fear and anger and how you could help someone?
Yeah, I honestly think fear and anger are like cousins. They're just anger for me, and I think I said this on other podcasts whenever we've talked. Anger is actually a healthy emotion. It's something healthy that we're all supposed to feel at some point in time. We always give anger this really negative connotation, but when something is to the point where you're feeling anger with it, it's basically to me that's almost like a red flag. It's like do something about it then. And if it's not something that you can do something about or change, then figure out how you can disengage with it or what how you need to kind of resolve it for yourself in a way. So I look at anger as like almost like the match that lights the fire in a lot of people, because what you realize when you're angry is suddenly you're like, you could be so sleepy and so tired and feeling so lazy. But if you get angry, it's like all of a sudden you're boosted with all this energy. And so it's like, well, what do you do with all this energy? It's a matter of like, again, this always goes back to meditation, but when you can stop and pause and notice that, oh my gosh, I'm experiencing anger. I'm really mad right now. What can I do with this that's productive and useful to me, as opposed to just reacting, like I said before, like reacting to the anger or the fear, whatever's being pushed at us. Because to me, and I don't want to get too much into the state of the world, but what I am seeing a lot of is there's a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of fear being kind of it's almost like rumors and stuff. It's almost like a fear rumor mill of some sorts that I see happening, in the media and on TV and in the newspapers and every really where that you turn. And this is where I feel very grateful again to bring the gratitude back about being an intuitive, because I can feel what do I really need to pay attention to and what's just generally noise and what is just kind of like what are they using to sell their paper or their TV show or whatever. So I just feel that the more that you connect in with your intuition, the more that you understand what resonates with you, what feels good and what you want to follow, um, that's how you live in your truth, and that's how you can kind of step away from fear, where you can actually take information that's being presented to you, and if it is making you have a reaction of fear or anger, it's kind of our responsibility to take that reaction that we're having, that fear or that anger, and decide what we want to do with it rather than just quickly have a response.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.